Please adhere to YouTube's selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during video. All actions are performed by professionals.
Alrighty, so today I'm going to be smoking a cigarette while sitting on a parking block, like this one right here. And today I'm actually going to be sitting and smoking a cigarette on this specific parking block, which I am looking forward to doing, much more so than not, as it appears to be a pretty nice parking block, if I do say so myself. But what exactly is a parking block? Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. It is a block that is meant to make sure that your car does not roll into anywhere it's not supposed to, like let's say onto a sidewalk and then onto the grass and then right next to a tree and then into a baseball field where people are playing baseball. It's meant to stop your car from doing that sort of stuff, and it's also just meant to be something to kind of drive up on just a little bit, just to make sure you're parked all the way back where you want to be and what not. That's what a parking block is, and they do their job pretty well. But the best thing about parking blocks, in my personal opinion, is that they are a multi-use object. That's right, parking blocks, even though they might not sound like it, are indeed a multi-use object. Because if you're at a park without a good bench, if you're in the middle of a parking lot without a bench at all, and you don't have a chair on you, and you're looking for somewhere to sit, a parking block really is a very good option, if you ask me at least. I have smoked many cigarettes while sitting on parking blocks before. They're just a really nice spot to kind of sit down and enjoy a smoke if you don't want to sit directly on the ground, crisscross applesauce and stuff like that. I really enjoy smoking cigarettes on parking blocks. And a couple hours ago, I realized that I had never actually made a video of me smoking a cigarette on a parking block before. I'm not sure why I've never thought to do it before, but for some reason, I haven't. I think it's just one of those things that's so ingrained in my day-to-day life that I've just never really thought about making a video all about doing it. But honestly, that's exactly why I want to make this video today. It's just something that is so normal to do that I think it's going to be interesting to kind of cover just how good or just how bad smoking a cigarette while sitting on a parking block actually is. And so as such, well, I certainly am looking forward to smoking a cigarette while sitting on a parking block today. But what is the cigarette that I'm going to be smoking during today's video? Well, today I'm going to be smoking an American Spirit full-bodied red cigarette, which is a little bit of a better cigarette than not and is a little bit of a more strong cigarette than not as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and sit down on the parking block right here. I do suppose I can't actually smoke a cigarette while sitting on a parking block if I don't actually sit down on a parking block and then smoke a cigarette, now can I? So without further ado, let's go ahead and just sit down on this parking block right here. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to sit down on the edge of it, and I'm now going to go ahead and just set my camera down on the ground, just like that right there. Hopefully that should work. And now that I am sitting on a parking block, as you guys can see, I do suppose, without further ado, it is now time for me to go ahead and get my pack of American Spirit full-bodied red cigarettes all opened up. And I do suppose now it is time for me to go and get one of them out. And it's also time for me to go and get my lighter all out of my pocket. I can't very well smoke a cigarette while sitting on a parking block if I don't actually, well, get my lighter out and actually light it up, now can I? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this cigarette all lit up, and let's go ahead and get to smoking a cigarette while sitting on a parking block. Yes sir, you know what I'm saying? And for me, at least, the most comfortable way to sit on a parking block is to kind of get centered, to kind of just center yourself on the top of the parking block, and then it's just kind of like spread your legs out. Like, this is a really comfortable position for me. Like, I'm just a little bit above the ground. I have a little bit room between me and the actual floor itself. This is another really good position. This is like a really stable position in my personal opinion. You have your feet flat on the ground. It's almost like you're squatting, but you've got like a lot of support coming from the parking block itself. Another good position that is a little bit less stable is this one. You're pretty much sitting crisscross applesauce, but you're not like actually right on the ground itself. This is a little bit unstable, so I don't tend to sit this way all that much. I'd have to say my go-to position for smoking a cigarette on a parking block is just sitting like this, in all honesty. Just sitting like this. Sometimes I'll just look on my phone, just scroll through whatever I want to look at or something like that kind of thing, just puffing away on my smoke and whatnot. It's a good spot, if you ask me at least, and parking blocks in general are good spots to smoke cigarettes, in my personal opinion. And this specific one is especially good because I've got some beautiful nature in front of me, and it's pretty comfortable as well. I'd have to say this sort of style of parking block that I'm sitting on right now, where it's got sort of like some angles on it, like where it's got like kind of flat right there, goes to a little bit of an angle, goes to like flat up here, and same thing on the other side and whatnot. I'd have to say like this style of parking block is probably the most comfortable to sit on, in my personal opinion at least. I've sat on some others where it's just kind of like flat, right angle, and then right angle all the way down, and those are not bad by any means, but just because the angles are a bit kind of, well, sharp, your legs kind of dig into them just a little bit, and they're not as comfortable as they could be, frankly put. This is definitely the most comfortable style of parking block, in my personal opinion. I don't know what the actual model name for this specific parking block is. I'm sure there's many makers of parking blocks out there, and I'm sure this is pretty much just a generic design for parking blocks. It doesn't say anything on that side. It doesn't say like what the maker is on that side or anything like that kind of thing. But I am noticing it's actually not just concrete. There is some rebar in there as well. And of course there's like rebar like right here and right over there on the other side, just making sure that it's kind of mounted in the ground, making sure that if a car kind of runs into it a little bit faster than not, that it, well, doesn't move and whatnot, that the car kind of goes over it rather than this moving, so it doesn't get broken or nothing like that kind of thing. As a whole, in my personal opinion, parking blocks really are a fantastic alternative to sitting on a bench. If the park you're at doesn't have good benches, or if all the benches are full and you're just kind of sitting in the parking lot and the parking lot has parking blocks, honestly, it's a great place to sit. It really is a great place to sit. And it almost feels like you're just sitting on the curb kind of thing, because essentially this is the same size as a curb. It pretty much has the same sort of almost purpose as a curb to some extent, although a little bit less so. Like a curb is both meant to make sure that cars don't go over it, and it's also meant to kind of funnel water towards a drain and whatnot. Like that's what a curb is meant for. So these are kind of like less useful curbs, but they're really useful for smoking cigarettes on when there isn't a curb. Like this park right here doesn't have curbs. It kind of just goes right into the grass. So if they didn't have these, I would have nowhere to sit except on the ground itself. And I'm like just sitting like just like this kind of thing, just crisscross applesauce. I'll acknowledge it's not as comfortable. I just don't really like sitting on the ground as much as I like sitting on a parking block, frankly put. Now, I'll acknowledge, up until I was doing a little bit of research for today's video, I actually thought that these were called parking dogs. I've always heard them referred to as that, just all throughout my life, frankly put. Oh, make sure you don't hit the parking dog and everything like that kind of thing. That's what I've heard, and apparently there's really like no actual concise name for parking blocks. Like, I guess maybe it's like a regional thing, or maybe it's just my parents that call them parking dogs. I'm not exactly sure, but some people call them parking blocks, some people call them parking dogs, some people call them just like parking barriers. There's like a number of different names. There's really no actual technical definition for what this is besides just parking block, frankly put. I'd have to say the worst parking blocks out there that are like the worst to sit on are parking blocks that are made out of a sort of like plastic, and they're like really low to the ground, like they're really just there to kind of just nudge up on, but they're like not actually made of concrete itself. Like concrete really is, in my personal opinion, the best material to sit on if you want to smoke a cigarette. If it's a parking dog, at least. I mean, like plastic chairs are pretty decent, I won't deny that. But when it comes to parking blocks itself, when it comes to parking dogs, I personally think concrete really is the optimal material. Like a plastic or like resin, and I've seen a couple of these, they're not super common, thankfully, but plastic and resin, sort of like parking blocks, they're really just not it. They tend to be a little bit slick. Like this has a little bit of roughness to it. Like I'm not going anywhere. Like I can kind of slide back and forth. Well, not really slide back and forth, but I can kind of move myself back and forth, and I'm not going anywhere by any means. But on like one of the plastic ones, you start kind of sliding just a little bit. They're not really comfortable to sit on because they're just a lot less stable, frankly, but they tend to be a little bit lower to the ground as well. So just a little bit more comfortable because of that, just a little bit less comfortable because of that as well. yeah, this style of parking block really is my personal favorite, and I consider it to be the best to smoke cigarettes on, in all honesty. There's a bunch of cars pulling into the parking lot I'm in right now. I think I'm gonna go and try to grab myself a little bit of a screenshot real quick. Just now realizing that I never did that. And this is another really good position to sit on, in my personal opinion. Like kind of 1 foot out, 1 foot tucked in, or maybe like 1 foot up like that. It's a pretty good position if you ask me, at least. Very comfortable. Now, is sitting on a parking block as comfortable as sitting on a real bench? Is it as comfortable as, let's say, sitting in a chair? I'd have to say it's not, but it's definitely more comfortable than sitting on the ground. And that's really, in my personal opinion, why parking blocks are so great. They're just something that is kind of a really in-between. They're definitely a lot better than sitting on the ground. They're not quite as good as like sitting in a chair or on a bench or something like that, but they're a good alternative when you have no better option, frankly put. And as a whole, I'm glad that parking blocks exist. You know, I could probably do without them for my car, frankly put. I tend to make sure my car isn't going to roll away or anything like that kind of thing, but just to sit on, to enjoy a little bit of a smoke, they're really nice. But I will acknowledge one thing. Parking blocks are by no means ergonomic. They are not doing any favors for my back. Sitting on a parking block, it ain't doing nothing for my back, in all honesty. I certainly do not feel like I am sitting in a Herman Miller Aeron chair right now by any means. That's what we need, I think, though. Herman Miller Aeron branded parking blocks. Now that is something that I would be tempted to buy. Used on Craigslist, that is, because Herman Miller Aeron chairs and probably Herman Miller Aeron blocks would be like way too expensive. But I'd buy one used for like really cheap off Craigslist or something like that kind of thing. Well, I think that's all I had to my smoke, and I think that's all I had to this video today. Certainly hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video where I smoked a cigarette while sitting on a parking block. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video, of course, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content. I have my Instagram, my book, my merch, my P.O. box, and my second channel all in the description down below. Go check it all out. To the next one, y'all, stay safe in peace and have a great one. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying?